Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We are back at the Drunken Tarrasque. I have Rachel with me.
Hi.
Yes, and we're going to talk about home brewing. Flavor or savior? Well.
That flavor, Mike.
Gobble it down, let it run down your chin. But anyway, innuendos aside, the thing is, one of the bigger things for me, what I've seen with home brewing, has been it's usually used as a fail-safe to stop bad mechanics bleeding in or saving a problem. Like, earlier editions you rolled for your stats, but you'd roll them in a row, and you didn't really get the ability to apply them where you wanted to. Later editions let that, and that was kind of a general home-brewed rule for people. For me personally, that's the concept that I've noticed, that homebrew has this tendency to be used as a savior, to save something rotten in the system or in your game. I don't believe it should be used as such, but I see it more used like that. Because you start looking at the mechanics, things start to shake apart, because certain systems are not well designed. This is any system out there. This is not just Dungeons and Dragons, but in general, all these systems, they have some serious problems that a lot of people who are smart, who look at these mechanics, start using homebrew to save the rules. Now, Rachel can continue on.
Well, I think what we're looking at is a lot of times people see the limitations of 5th edition, and what they really need are some of the things that you're going to get out of 3.5, and they end up just kind of putting like a piece of plywood over a pothole in the road. It's like that's
the Chicago style of filling potholes. I see.
Yes, exactly. There are limitations to 5th edition, but I think at the same time, people really want to get. They want to be new player friendly because they want to be able to get more people into the game. They want to be able to get new people to the table, and 5th edition is going to be the easiest way for them to do that because it's
lobotomized.
It's close. It's very close to being idiot proof, but at the same time, it's not built for advanced players as well. I mean, it doesn't do well with extremely smart players. It's very difficult to get a level of lethality. I mean, I'm pretty sure you could give a perfect example of what we're talking about with the game we're running right now, you're running.
Well, here's the thing with me. I'm having a problem with making this lethality and danger zone, this danger element, in the game. I look at the DMG and it says, for a rough estimate of players for a lethal game for level 3, you're looking at roughly 1,400 points for it to be a deadly encounter. However, in my experience, I had to make it 2,600 to 2,800 just to have it, in theory, lethal, and my party, intelligent and well thought out as they were, made the encounter, though still deadly and dangerous, still felt like child's play. Essentially, I made a level 5 encounter for a party of level 5 people in the game, and they still had...
You mean level 3 people.
Look, you guys were level 3. I put it practically, if you looked at the stat number block, if I followed it exactly, it was a level 5 encounter for a party of 4. And this was a party of 3. And this is kind of what I started realizing. Like, there are so many issues with the problem and with the system. And for me, homebrewing is that way to solve what is essentially makes the game engaging. You need that sense of danger. 5th edition's homebrewing, I would say, is you're going to have to kind of, to a degree, throw out the multiplication in the back end for monster encounters, just because if you have so many of a certain monster, you start multiplying it. Like, right now, at, 6 of the same monster, I would say throw out the double times 2 modifier, mainly because, they're not that deadly. They don't have these negative aspects to them. And especially if you have smart characters and smart players, you're not going to actually be in bad off when you play. But for me, I think homebrewing should be, I can rip out a monster manual and go, hey, I want my troll, instead of to be just regenerating, I want him to do swiping backhand attacks that hits an area in front of him, knocking several people. Again, mechanically inclined people would start arguing, okay, you're going to have to take all these little numbers into account. Like, for me, it's those little flavor changes that I like, because it starts making the players go, oh, I don't have to look at these monsters as stat blocks. You're starting to look at these creatures as living beings that you have to be careful of, not, again, a stat block coming at you to run you over.
That's really what you run into, is you need to be able to up the difficulty levels and try to figure out a way to combat the intelligent player. Because let's be honest here right now, we've got a lot of experienced players in our current game, and they come up with increasingly creative ways of getting from one point to another. I mean, it took me a little bit while to start getting the ideas too. It was like,
well, that's the thing, is that Rachel's been plopped in with people who have, I would argue, they got their chip.
Experience than me.
They're
more experience.
They're veterans. They know how to work the game. They know how to work the DM, and I know there's no doubt that I can tell someone, I'm looking at you. You know who you are. I'm looking at you. You know how to work me, but it's fine. I understand it. It's funny, but that's what happens when you're playing these games. There's these little mechanisms that you got to start realizing, and smart players will start doing that. And homebrewing is that essentials fail-safe. Now, I'm not one of these bad DMs that go, I'm going to homebrew to fuck over my players. It's, okay, these are smart people. I'm going to leave little hints in the game to make sure that they can handle these problems. And that was the biggest thing for me that made me laugh so much, is because I changed several creatures, and I know, like Neff and Kat and all the other people that started saying, oh, I know what you're doing, I know what creature that is, that was a good reskinning of that character, you described him in a different way, and they thought it was funny and enjoyable, because in that instant moment of playing, they were like, okay, what the hell is Michael doing? Like, okay, we're swinging at this thing that sounds like a statue. Okay, we're easily cutting into that. Okay, this is now scary, but we know we can take them. Like, they started understanding that these things weren't high armor class, and I kind of give that flavor to them.
Well, I think, maybe we should clarify what we mean by homebrew. When we say homebrew, we're talking about deviating from the monster manual, deviating from the core rule book, deviating from the DM's guide. Okay, if you do any of those things, deviating from the system that you're working with, and you decide that you want to make little changes, it then falls into the homebrew territory. And that's where we also go into the whole table rules. Like, things are going to vary from table to table on how you do it. It's kind of like how cooking is different in everybody's house. I'm talking about, like, everybody's going to do things a little bit differently. I think it's the best way to explain that. But the problem with 5th edition is, again, that I think right now, Wizards of the Coast and a lot of these other places that are coming up with games, they really want to go user-friendly, but they're really just dumbing a lot of stuff down. And I guess I understand what they're trying to do. They think that instead of playing to the niche market that D&D and other tabletop gaming has always pitched to, they want to try and broaden the demographic. But I almost want to say it hurts.
It hurts in the long term.
System.
It hurts in the long term.
Yeah, that's what you're going to run into.
Well, that's the thing, is homebrewing. Like, okay, one of the things I've homebrewed with this game is the die of inspiration, or inspiration point, whatever the proper term is. The concept is a very wonderful idea, that you technically get the ability to re-roll. Downside mechanically is, you have to say it beforehand. It's like, no. For me, re-roll any dice. However, I add the addition of, this is something very powerful and potent. It not only allows you to re-roll, if you're trying to pull off some crazy stunt, it gives you an advantage. You start burning these points. If you're on your death's door, you can burn a point of inspiration to give you advantage on these things, or if you survive, you get more hit points. Or push, like, I'm going to spend them. I let people stack them, because when it comes down later in the game, they're going to need them. or pulling off more stunts that are technically not allowed in the game. Like, I want to gymnastically jump over this creature, turn around, shoot two bolts out of my crossbow, and run away. It's like, yeah, you technically can't do that, but if you're going to pull that, you're going to burn a point of inspiration so you can pull off this very dangerous stunt, and I'm going to put in more in your favor as a DM. That's just how I work, because it's like, you know what? I'm not going to punish you, but at the same time, I got to realize, like, there has to be a cost for this.
And there are a lot of different ways you can go about homebrewing something. I know some reskinning is one. You can reskin monsters or modify pre-existing monsters to fit your situation. Make them a little bit different. Some players don't particularly like that because
they feel it's cheating. They feel it's metagaming from the DM, and
I think the important thing is I remember we talked about we talked about how this is escaping me at the moment. No, we talked about session 0 and things like that, and I think this is something that should be discussed in session 0, and if everybody agrees, okay, we're open to a homebrew game.
Well, and one of the other things I do say is I homebrew my monsters, be prepared for whatever that may entail. Again, when you homebrew, it's also the understanding, if you're homebrewing monsters, this comes to the very encouragement of imagination, not within the player, not just the players, but the DM, is that if you're homebrewing a monster, be it a minor change or a completely new monster, detail is key, fundamentally. If you're saying you're making an orc, but you want to make orcs smart or wise, give them a description that shows off or hints at this. That you see this cunning, this gleam in their eye of understanding when you see them. Like, this already is telling the players, just from visual effects alone, these creatures are different than you normally expect. They're showing some aspects that this may not be your typical encounter. Because if you don't do a homebrew like that, as that little give and take, players will always argue you're cheating. Now, if a DM gives that detail, it's your player's fault for not picking it up, but you have to be clear you got to be distinct and clear about what you say as a DM.
And I think that is it's really important that you do actually discuss this in session 0. Say, like, we homebrew a bit here. This is what we do at the table. This is what you're agreeing to. This is what you're signing up for when you're when you're getting into the game. And you know, the games that I've been in before that have been homebrewed have been have had more dangerous encounters, but they've also been a lot more fun than your average run of the mill. We're gonna stick exactly to the module, and we're gonna stick exactly to the core rulebook. So, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. It's like you have to be willing to have more deadly encounters, potentially deadly encounters, and you have to be willing to be open to something crazy coming at you. And so it can be really fun. In fact, I would actually suggest, I don't have these on the top of my head, but right now I've seen some really, really great monsters that people have already homebrewed and pre-created as an expansion, an unofficial expansions for Dungeons and Dragons, things like that. They have already pre-statted monsters for 5th edition, things like that. Oh, so, do some searches for those. They can be really cool.
Well, one of the other things I would point out as a very good area for homebrewing, which I almost see every DM do once they got a couple games underneath their belt, is homebrewing their world. Now, this is, I would say, it's just essentially making up your own world. I call it homebrewing because it's kind of an okay term where people can understand, but if you're making your own world, this is not the time, this is how you handle it. There are going to be certain rules, knowledge, and logic that's going to be in your world, regardless of anything, and that your players will know fundamentally. You have to, if they come to a situation that they should know that, you tell the players, if this is your own world, you would know X, Y, and Z about this situation. Don't be one of those DMs that does not, even if it's an existing universe, does not give the player this knowledge, because that's the honest-to-God middle finger to the players that you got to realize with home brewing, it's okay if it's an accident, but you got to realize there's certain rules and things a player will know about that world as no different than breathing. And that's kind of the important thing with homebrewing a world. You got to have have a list of what's important in your world. Your players are always going to know, because when you do that, if the problem comes up, you can go, oh yeah, you know that, don't worry, you don't need to make any rolls or any additional rolls. And it makes the player not feel overwhelmed. But it also allows for the uniqueness of your world to still exist.
Well, one of the problems I've been seeing come up is people are calling for all of these different things to happen to the next edition and everything like that, but some of which don't really make as much sense to me, because one of the beautiful things about D&D is that it is customizable and it does vary from table to table. So if you don't like how things are at one table, you can just go to the next table. Like if you don't like the way things are, you can homebrew. I mean, if you want to have, I don't know, if you want to attack somebody with an army of blue whales, you can do that depending on the table that you're at. So that's...
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to start summoning those things again.
Oh god, we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. We already figured out how to make nukes. Or mini nukes.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens with me and my home brewing. You can make whatever the hell you want.
Well, not whatever we want, but I think whatever entertains you. Like, if it's really, really super crazy, like, you do make sure that you add in the possibility for things to go really, really bad, but it has to be very, very entertaining. And I think that's what ends up making you more permissive, is because it's just...
What makes me so open-minded is because I allow it to bite you guys in the ass? Is that what you're saying? That I let you guys get...
I'm not saying open-minded, I'm saying permissive, as in you will let certain things slide if you know that it's going to entertain the shit out of you. Know that.
Well, that's actually how I think any game should be run. It's like, it's about entertainment. It's not this, I'm the DM, my narrative is God, and you shall not infringe upon it. No, it's like you're all playing together, you fucking dipshit.
That's the funny thing about all this. Everybody starts getting, super serious about D&D. Like, D&D has to be all of these things. It's like, D&D can be whatever the hell you want it to be. It's your damn table, okay? You choose what table you get to go to. So, I mean, when people have problem with homebrew, or they have problems with all of these other things that they think should be in 5th edition, like all these other little flavoring things, like, let's say people are saying something like, oh, there's not enough diversity. It's your table, okay? It's your table that you're at, I know I'm going a little bit off on a tangent here, but it's like, I know people have been discussing that stuff lately, and it's like, it's your table. Like, if you want to play a race of African elves that have special magical powers, if you want to run a game in Wakanda,
in Vibranium,
if you want to run a game in magical Wakanda, you can. You can make that happen today. If you want to run a game where it's LGBT magical Wakanda, you could have that today.
Well, that's the biggest thing, is any role-playing game is about using your goddamn bloody imagination. And it doesn't matter, if you're wanting to put these things in there, put them in there. But the bigger thing is, when you start doing that, think about it. Think how this is going to affect your world, your players. Not in, they're going to be accepting. It's just if I put magical Wakandans in my game, how would that interact with everyone else? Would other people fight against them? Would they push back? Would they be more open or welcoming? Would they become a trading hub? These are important concepts that if you don't focus on and think on, any addition is going to feel flat. There's nothing wrong. Okay, there was one article I didn't fully read, but about elves and being gender fluid or stuff like that. It's there's nothing wrong with putting that in there, but you got to realize, if you put that in there, think about how the world as a whole will react to it. So, and you got to look at it in the negative and the positive, because if you have it all positive or all negative, your players are going to get bored, give you the finger, and become sky pirates.
Well, let's be honest. Like, I'm going to say one thing right now that people may not like is, like, people probably already homebrewed this. Like, what's the point in adding all this stuff there? Like, people have already homebrewed this. I guarantee you there have been people out there who've already had, like, gay elves or gay orcs or gender fluid, I don't know, like, halflings or something. Like, they've had this already. Like, what's the point? It's a customizable game. I don't know if it's necessarily the job of a company to tell you
tell you how to play their game the right way. Wow, that's
like, I mean, just put the game out and let people customize. There's no like.
Well, I mean, for me, the best thing.
We're getting off topic, but it's just like, that's the beauty of this game, and I think like that's what people should take away from Homebrew is that a lot of the stuff is flavor, and I mean, if you want to add a whole bunch of extra stuff, you can. Like, the sky is the limit. Like, the only limit is your imagination. If you want to make this happen, make it happen. I think, anything, the problem is, like, laziness. And so maybe folks want a pre-made module or something where they already have magical Wakanda in it. And, like, I guess, like, if that's what you want, but it's like, why not make it yourself? Like, then you get exactly what you want. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, well, again, homebrewing is the perfect way to make it what you want. And you start also realizing, when you actually take the time and start homebrewing, you start understanding the limitations that come up. You start understanding how the world is going to work. And these are the good homebrewers that I've seen. I've looked through enough of them. Like, they'll start explaining, like, okay, if you have this in your world, this is probably what's going to affect your world. If you have a nation of psychic users, you're probably going to have them. You're going to have them dominating large swatches of people. They're going to be doing these things. Animals and creatures are going to probably be more dangerous and deadly because of that. Because these things are so powerful, they're able to manipulate. It's that little ounce of thinking the thing through with the imagination. Like, coming up grand ideas are great, but homebrewing is taking those ideas and making them become solid in your damn world, where you start going, this is grounded in my world, and it will have a tangible effect. Again, it will lead to great games and great stories when you start taking those little baby steps forward.
It will lead to magical Wakanda, Mike. We will have our vibranium, Mike.
On that note, thank you for joining us. Let Rachel be excited by something vibrating. We will see you next time. Thank you for joining us, and good night.
Bye.